Hello and welcome to Lyre. We will be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is basically after the whole, POV from different people. POV from, Lyall, where he found out that the dagger had a Drysian origin. POV from, I believe it was Adrius or Andreas, whatever his name is, I don't care, I'm pronouncing it wrong, I'm sorry. Um, where you basically, what was it? Where you were interrogating, what's his face? Kadaj. And then you found Lyall all beaten up. And then the POV of the main character whose name is escaping me right now for some weird reason. Richter. Yeah, Richter. So yeah. So now I believe that this is the update with the trial, or the chapter with the trial, I should say. So yeah, we're gonna see whether or not Richter is able to peek at, and see who the killer is, or if he's gonna, hang, or whatever. Anyway, so yeah, without further ado, let us continue Lyre. Chapter 11, Day 37. I've avoided sleep for the past few days. Or rather, sleep has been avoiding me. No matter how much I yearn or how hard I try, it always seems just out of reach. The tender feeling of resting my body into the warm embrace of unconsciousness feels like a distant memory. Hope turns to sand, falling between my fingers, and my determination is like the flame of a candle. I can't let it go, though. I feel it's the only thing that I have left of myself. It feels like it's been ages since I've closed my eyes. My eyelids feel like dry leather, and the eyes beneath them burn with a searing pain. Reality feels like a blur. It's a similar feeling to when I wake up from a strange dream. It takes a moment to process everything around me. Even without any sleep, I still dream. My eyes are open, and I'm wide awake, but I still dream. I dream of Lyall, stripped of his armor and thrown before the steps of the throne. His scar over his eye bleeds, dripping blood onto the branches of the throne. Each drop spurts a flower, blooming a beautiful crimson color. When the blood is spent, the flower wilts. With that, a knife slides between my ribs. I dream of Liz, clad in the armor of an angel. She rides a bear, eyes black as night and fur matted with blood. Her gaze is cold and conflicting. Again, lightning strikes outside the window as my rack of antlers rips through the drapes. Then I dream of Raynor. He stands before a window, left antler made of gold, his towering figure bathed in red light from the frames below. A long, slender sword falls from his hand, clattering on the floor. Cold steel drags across my throat. My dreams have slowly begun to merge with my visions. Like the mind's eye, they all swirl into a spiral, mixing together like a whirlpool, dragging me down deeper and deeper into the chasm of the past. The visions mock me as I seek out answers. I am too stubborn to realize that I am already out of time, I suppose. The day of the trial has arrived, and I am still no closer than I was 9 days ago. I can't help but wonder if I would be closer had I not tried to rush things. Dwelling on it won't do me any good, though. I'm sorry, Tigran. There is a long silence followed by a ringing in my ears. At first I think they're just not going to respond, but after a few moments, they let out a reply. Don't. They're muffled, almost like they're talking into a pillow. Tigran? Are you even there? Another long moment of silence before they respond, this time a bit more clearer. Yes. I am still here, but not for long. I can hear an uneasy tone in their voice as the words catch in their throat. What do you mean? The trial is today. This time their tone is a bit more stern. It's our connection. It's growing weaker by the day. Our connection? I think back to when they were first beginning to reach me. It seems like forever ago, but in reality it's only been a few weeks. Their voice was so muffled and sometimes I barely noticed them. Why is our connection weak? Will it get better? Tigran takes a deep breath and answers. They sound like they're on the other side of a door. It's not your fault. At all. The fault lies entirely with me. The reason our connection is growing weaker is because I've been pushing you. I wanted to make sure that you would have enough time to train, but I also wanted you to play it safe. I now realize that I've only made things worse. Don't say that. I can feel that I'm getting close. With just a few more tries, I'm sure that I'll be able to figure all of this out. I try to put out an optimistic attitude, but it comes off more as false hope. I'm sure that they can sense that. You don't need to reassure me. If one thing is true, it's the fact that I failed you. Nobody has ever trained as hard and fast as you have. You have more potential than I ever imagined. My power is simply not what it used to be. It wasn't enough. I stand up and walk over to the window, resting my arms on the cold stone in the opening. What do you mean by that? If anything, you've given me a chance. It's something that I have to admit. Even with all the rules and restrictions put on their power, and all the knowledge that they have kept to themselves, they've only been trying to help me. But I also can't help but remember that this relationship goes both ways. They're helping me so that I can do their bidding. I can't help but wonder, why me? I know I wasn't exactly chosen, but it feels odd that all of this would start to happen the moment that I ended up in this position. Coincidental, even. I only mean that I am limited in my ability, but it's because of a sacrifice that I had to make. Sacrificing what? I think back to Alverton, the monkey from the vision that I had, and I feel a lump form in my throat. Nothing like that, I assure you. They read into my mind again. I'm a bit used to it by now, but not entirely numb to the feeling. Then again, the thought of them sacrificing Elverton was almost as intrusive as Tigran is. My powers were once beyond your comprehension. I was on a similar standing with the higher gods. Their voice wavers, and it's like listening to them while my ears are clogged with water. We were all creators in our own right, controlling laws and ideas, helping the world turn. It sounds less interactive than the role that I play now. I understand, but the power was immense. However, it was nothing without control. Like a farm, crops can grow and animals can breed, but it will always need a farmer. Someone to control and guide. I was the first of the gods to realize this. Hearing them speak of the higher gods causes me to feel a bit sick. Trying to understand it all is a bit easier as time goes on, but the overwhelming feeling of it never really goes away. The sacrifice that they mentioned also doesn't leave my mind. The sacrifice that you made, does it have anything to do with Elverton? It was for Elverton. I sacrificed my power for Elverton and the world that he knew. The state of the world was heading down a path of decay, and I knew that I had to do something. I brought it to the attention of my fellow gods. They were quite content with seeing things play out, knowing that they could always start over. I, however, was not willing to settle for such an outcome. I hear a distant rumbling sound, and I cannot determine if it's coming from within my head or somewhere outside. I proposed giving up most of my power and freedom in order to give the world a second chance. With this trade, I would be allowed an avatar, a mortal vessel which I would be able to use as an emissary of sorts. They would be able to understand past mistakes and pave a path for a brighter future. They would act as a guide for the world, and I would act as a guide for them. Thank you for answering my questions, but why are you telling me about all of these other things? I tell you this because it is relevant. Is there any way that I can stop our connection from growing weaker? Can you do something about it? Yes. That sacrifice I made for Elverton. I'm going to make a similar sacrifice for you. What? Don't think too much of it. The ribbon that binds us is weakening, and I need to take action. You've done your part to get us out of the situation, so allow me to do mine. What are you going to do? What are you talking about? Someone's going to come down here for me any minute now. I need you. Don't worry. I'm just going to consult with the higher gods. Their voice becomes more and more distant, and I can't help but feel that I am losing a part of myself. If everything goes the way that I plan, you'll come out of this with your head still on your shoulders. I'll be back. Please take care and trust in me. I step away from the window, eyes looking up into the air as if they were standing right there. You have to believe me when I tell you that everything will turn out okay. No, even if it seems like it won't. You have to have faith. Their voice trails off with each word. You don't have to do this. I'm close. I can. Tigran? There isn't a response. For the first time in weeks, my mind feels empty. I clumsily sit down on the cold slab of stone. The silence is almost numbing. It's like a weight was lifted off my chest, but something inside of me was taken along with it. Tigran? I still receive no response. This can't be happening. No. No. Please tell me this isn't happening. It's not even the fact that they're gone. As abrupt as it was, I know that they'll be back. They said that they would. The problem that circles in my mind now is that they're about to do something drastic. How is this going to affect things? Can I still even use my powers? Before I can even feel like I'm closing my eyes, my consciousness jumps from one point to another, and a slight feeling of relief washes over me. It does nothing to quell the anxiety, though. The colorful walls of the chasm dance by as I stand there in the midst of it all. Winds of shimmering dust fly by at the speed similar to when I first arrived here, only reminding me of just how stressed I truly am. Tigran! I call their name, yelling it out into the tunnel, but I get no sign of response. The winds only pick up slightly and the echoing voices of the past flow by, sending chills through my body. I start to feel more and more aggravated as the situation settles in. If you can hear me, please come back. You don't need to take such drastic measures. Even if you do, we can talk about it more here, right? Again, no response. The anger swells more and more inside of me. Weeks of frustration have finally reached their boiling point. You stupid god! Why can't you just tell me these things? Between your botched plan to farm our world and the other gods' desire to watch it burn, I've had it up to here with everyone's shit. The wind picks up, but I stand firmly in place. If you want me to shoulder everyone's burdens, including yours, then just tell me. I turn around, looking up and down the tunnel, trying to see if I can get any reaction from anyone. Nothing happens. Damn it all! I lean forward in my seated position, lowering my head down between my legs. I'm still able to use my power, right? Ty never said anything about me losing that. Even so, I don't think I have enough stamina. Any sense of weight being lifted off of my shoulders is now gone, as a numbing feeling of dread creeps down my neck. I squint my eyes, trying to concentrate on the vision in my mind. That night. I need to know who did it. Just a hint. Any hint that can give me a chance. Damn it! The vision comes across even messier this time, only granting me a slight visual. Everything's falling apart before my eyes. Each time I try to have a vision, it's like looking into a mirror before someone shatters it. Every time I get so much of a glimpse, the vision collapses and I'm thrown back into reality. Controlling what I want has gotten easier, but seeing it has become more and more difficult with each day that passes. I lay down on the bed, trying to relax my body on the cold stone surface. A wave of exhaustion begins to overwhelm me. Laying there, staring at the ceiling, I contemplate falling asleep. Someone will be down here sometime today to drag me out of the cell. I don't know when, though, so I might as well try to rest. I'm going to need as much energy as possible. For the past few days, all I've been doing is dwelling on the past. Reaching out for a vision so close, yet so far away at the same time. For the first time in several days, I actually feel tired. Is it because Tigran's gone? No, I don't think that's the reason. They're not responsible for my stupid decisions. My strategy failed me. That's all there is to it. I haven't done anything. I haven't changed a bit. All the power that I have and all I can do is just sit idly by. My eyes jolt open as the sound of metal clanking together brings me out of my sleep. I sit up and look over to the doorway where I see a turnkey trying to open it. A feeling of dread washes over me. How long was I asleep for? I glance out the window and see that the sun is higher in the sky. It's most likely close to noon at this point. I had only been asleep for a short while. The cold air from the window wafts over my body and I wonder how I was able to sleep at all. I get up and move over to the other side of the cell. There's 2 turnkeys standing by the door. One of them is wrestling with the lock on the door while the other stands next to him, holding some cloth, shoes, and a bucket with hot steam rising from the top. The first one is muttering some swears under his breath while the other stands there silently, looking down at the ground. Behind them stands a castle guard. He's a lynx, clad in basic armor with a large green cloth draped around his neck and shoulders. The turnkey unlocks the door and it swings open, banging into the wall behind it. I don't really know what to do, so I just stand there, backed against the wall, looking at them. I'm still barely clothed, only wearing the pants from the ball. They're scuffed and stained with mud, looking more like a rusty brown compared to the midnight black that they were on that night. I look closer and realize that the bundle of cloth the turnkey is carrying looks like a pair of neatly folded clothes. Knowing that they are going to give me some clothes is a bit of a good feeling. I'd hate it to be tossed before the throne as a dirty man in rags. Better to be a dirty man in clean clothes. However, the bucket of water might be to clean myself. They step into the cell, the first turnkey stepping off to the side, while the second one walks in, setting the clothes down. "Stand still." He says this in a raspy voice which travels out from under his hood, like a growl in a bear cave. At first, I don't understand what they intend. Then I watch as the silent turnkey brings back the bucket and begins to heave it forward. "Wait!" I barely have any time to protest, let alone dodge as the hot water leaps through the air onto me. The initial shock is horrific as the heat surges over my body. Some of it gets in my mouth and it tastes salty. I throw myself back a bit, backing against the wall and blinking my eyes. "Why would you do that?" Neither of them respond. After a few seconds, the feeling of pain goes away, and soon I'm just standing there, dripping from head to toe with warm water. I'm far from being warm myself, though, as a cold breeze rushes in through the window, blowing onto my skin and sending goosebumps all over my exposed arms. "Turn around." I look up and the other turnkey is being handed a second bucket by the guard. I turn around. Reluctantly turning around, my body feels stiff, and I tilt my head backwards, clenching the muscles in my neck, bracing for the impact of hot water on my back. It only takes a moment for the stinging wave of water to be thrown onto me, trickling down my back and soaking my pants. A muddy puddle has formed on the ground around my feet. I don't feel clean. The guard nods to the silent turnkeys and then walks forward, picking up the clothes and setting them on the bed. "Those will be sitting on the bed for you, once you're ready." "Okay." The turnkey walks up to me and pulls a rough-looking sponge from the bucket. Before I can question them, they press it to my side and begin to sloppily scrub away at my skin. "What? What are you doing? Stop!" They pull back and look at the guard. He frowns and looks at me. "They need to clean you before you present yourself to the king." As the guard says this, the turnkey picks up where they left off and continues to scrub. This is ridiculous. I'm not a pig being prepared for the slaughter. I grab the sponge from their paw rather easily and throw it into the bucket. A small bit of water left in the bucket flies into the air, splashing on the ground in front of the guard's shoes. I am perfectly capable of washing myself. I say this while glaring at him. He steps forward and reaches into the bucket, pulling the sponge from the bottom. Rising back up, he shoves it into my chest with a bit of force, gritting his teeth as I'm backed into the corner. They're going to do their job, and you're going to be quiet. Then when they're done, they're going to escort you to the trial. They push harder on my skin, the metal undergloves digging into my skin. Or I could bring you there now, naked and shivering like the pathetic worm you... His words escape him as his attention is drawn to the hallway. Arr. The rhythmic sound of steel clanking together travels up the hall, getting closer with each thud. Bjorn? I imagine the large bear trudging his way down the hall. I can feel my heart beating in my chest as the guard's fist presses me against the wall. When he was standing in the doorway, I didn't realize how big he was. Lately, I've only been visited by people either around my height or much smaller than me. I grab his arm and push him off of me with what little strength I have. Get off! I actually managed to make them stumble back, their full attention on the hallway. That snaps them out of it, however, as they push me harder into the wall, letting out a snarl. The person walking down the damp corridor now sounds like they're just a few cells down. It can't be Bjorn. Whoever it is, their footsteps are swift and quick. They actually seem to pick up in pace, too. Maybe they'll stop this. My legs are shaking a bit as I stand there, pushed against the gritty wall of the cell. The two turnkeys stand off to the side of us, their paws clasped to their heads, drooping. The repetitive noise of feet on the dirt ground comes to a stop in the doorway. Lyall. He slides to the entrance, his tail stiff and shoulders high. He's wearing a helmet shaped to the head of a wolf, with a large plume coming out the top. I recall seeing it sitting on an armor rack in his room. Even in my dreams it would rest there, collecting dust. Out. The two turnkeys walk to the door, one of them handing the ring of keys to Lyall. But I was just... Leave. Now. I slide down the wall and fall into a seated position, legs shaking slightly. Seeing him and hearing his voice is the biggest relief that I had in weeks. The castle guard walks to the doorway and stops next to Lyall. You're not even allowed down here, if I remember correctly. I can't read the expression on his face through the helmet, but Lyall only turns his head slightly, looking down at the links. As the person who made the arrest, it's my duty to bring them to trial. If you have a problem with that, bring it up with your commander. I'm sure that he'd love for you to waste his time with such questions. The guard clenches his fists and scoffs. You'll be needing this, then. The guard drops a pair of shackles into Lyall's paw. Lyall leans in, his voice brought down to a quiet tone. Oh, and if I ever catch you pushing around prisoners again, I'll make sure your commander has you shoveling shit in the stables for weeks. Understood. After that, the guard walks off in a huff. Lyall turns his head away from the door and looks down at me. As I hear the guard's footsteps trail off into the distance, I find it hard to get any words out of my mouth. For a few moments, we both just stay in place, motionless. The only thing moving is Lyall's tail as it twitches from side to side. I apologize for the smell. What's with the helmet? Suddenly, he lunges himself towards me, throwing the shackles to the side and falling to his knees. He takes me in his arms, wrapping them around me tightly. His body gives off a comforting warmth, and there's even a faint smell of coconut. I just sit there and let him hug me, my body in shock. After a few seconds, I hug him back, his fur rubbing against my face. I'm so sorry. I'm so... sorry. I can feel him shaking slightly, and I even hear him sniffle. What are you apologizing for? You'd better not be apologizing on behalf of the moody king. My shaking continues, but he quickly starts to laugh. I've missed you, Richter. It's only been a couple of weeks, but it feels like ages. All I could do every day was wonder how you were getting by. You were constantly on my mind. He pulls back, planting his paws on my shoulders and looking down at me through his helmet. I can sort of see his eyes behind the visor, big and concerned. I look down, several emotions overwhelming me all at once. Embarrassment, happiness, sadness. I can tell that I'm blushing without even looking at a mirror. My face feels hot and the rest of my body is chilly. The water from that bucket bath drips from the tips of my hair onto the ground. I look back up at Lyall and he's still letting out nervous chuckles. I like your hair. You look kinda cool with it down like that. Even through his helmet, I can tell that he's forcing a smile. Before I knew it, tears began running down my cheeks. It feels good though. He takes me in his arms again and we both silently sit there, hugging. I sob into his chest for what seems like a few minutes. The thing that messes with me the most is the fact that I've just now realized how much I missed him. I see him in my dreams and in some visions, but through it all, most of the time that he felt like he was just there. Any emotions I would get were just drowned in other feelings and thoughts. Holding him in my arms helps quell my doubts. Having him here by my side is just pure bliss. After a couple more minutes, I pull away and look up at him. I've missed you so much, Lyall. He lowers his head. I really did never stop thinking about you. Not for a moment. He leans back in his seated position, his tail swishing across the floor like a broom. I raise up my hands and grasp the sides of his helmet. Are they making you wear this for the special occasion? No. All the royal guards have to wear these actually. Only on certain occasions though. He wrings his paws nervously and I brush my hands through the fur on his neck. Can you let me take it off? I want to see your handsome face. I begin to lift the helmet and he quickly brings his paws up to my hands to stop them. His paws stay there for a moment and he lets out a sigh. I lower my hands and he removes his helmet. What I see next makes my stomach twist into knots. He has a black eye. It's swollen to the point where he can barely open it. Oh my god. I take his face in my palm and caress it. I'm afraid my dedication to both the sword and the arts has left me middling in both. I gently rub my hands across his face, making sure not to cause him any pain. I start to get angry, knowing that this is all probably because of me. That's nonsense. Everyone says that you're a gifted swordsman. What actually happened? You'll learn all about it during the trial. Did you get into a fight with someone? Did someone attack you? He lowers his head in shame. All you need to know is that it was Bjorn, and that he's in worse shape than I am. Bjorn attacked you? And you won? He doesn't lift his head, still looking down at his lap. Not really. I lost a duel. That doesn't make much sense. I'm confused. Why would Bjorn be in worse shape? He was out for blood, and I didn't want either of us to die, so... He pauses, the words catching in his throat. I don't really want to talk about it if that's okay. The fight itself wasn't too important. I'm about to protest when an all too familiar noise echoes from outside the window. The bells start to toll, the noise bouncing off the walls outside and filling the cell with a reverberating noise. I look back up at Lyall and he's staring out the window too. He seems nervous, almost frozen in place, and I don't blame him. It's finally begun. I'll tell you all about it later. After we prove your innocence. He stands up from his seated position and holds out his paw. It'll be better if you arrive as soon as possible. I take his paw and he pulls me up to my feet. You're right. I look down at my body, filthy and dripping with water, the seat of my pants covered with mud. Picking up the sponge and bucket, I turn to Lyall, who's examining his helmet. If it's all right, I just need a few minutes to... you know. Yeah. I'll be out in the hall if you need me. Okay. After a few minutes, I manage to get myself relatively clean. The sponge actually does a good job of getting most of the dirt and everything else off my body. It's not a perfect bath, but it actually feels really good, aside from the shivers running up and down my skin. Also, once all the water is used up, I turned the bucket over and stood on top of it so that I could wash my feet. However, I should have placed it closer to the bed with the clothes. Lyall? Yeah? He appears in the doorway, his eyes darting up to mine after glancing down at my exposed genitalia. Can you, hand me those clothes on the bed? I don't want to get my feet dirty walking over there. Without saying anything, he quickly walks over to the stone slab and hands me the cloth for the underwear. While he does this, he looks like he's avoiding looking at my body. I take the underwear and start tying it around my waist. You know, you don't have to avert your gaze. Am I really that grubby looking? No, it's not that you're grubby. I'm just trying to be polite. I love looking at your body. He stops halfway through his statement, and we both just stand there in silence for a moment. I know you do. I fasten the underwear around my bits, and he turns away in his flustered state. He eventually does look back at me, and I even see him softly smile. I get the undergarments fastened around my waist neatly, but when I look up at him, he keeps his eyes trained on my torso. After a second, his gaze rises back up to mine. Pants? I point to the simple pair of pants sitting on the bed. Sorry. He grabs a pair of trousers and hands them to me. I slip into them pretty fast, and then he hands me the shirt. I put them on pretty quickly too. The sleeves are short and it feels a bit tight. Lyall tosses me a pair of socks and I slip them onto my feet, leaning against him for support. I step off the bucket and into the old pair of shoes. They don't fit me too well, a bit too big actually. I can walk in them though, and even so, I don't think that I'll be doing too much walking anyways. What about your jacket? I look behind him at the jacket that he's nodding towards. It's the one that I wore that night, damp and hanging from the bars of the cell door. Will the throne room be cold? Not really. I should be fine then. I walk past him, patting him on the back in a sarcastic manner. Stopping in the doorway, I turn around to look at him. He's standing in the center of the cell, helmet in one hand and shackles in the other. I look down at them and realize that for a moment I had forgotten about everything. Only for a moment. He locks eyes with me and then looks around the cell once more. Lyall? He stares at the bed, the cold slab of stone with one corner draped in a ratty blanket and the other corner draped with wet clothes from earlier. After a few seconds, he walks up to me and holds out the shackles. I hate to do this, but... It's okay. Just do it. He pauses for a moment before nervously clasping them around my wrists. They clink slightly as his intricate paws lock them in place. I'm going to make whoever killed Raynar pay for what they've done. You mean we, right? He looks into my eyes, a sad smile gracing his lips. Of course. He takes my hands in his paws and rubs his thumbs over my palms. For some reason, I can tell that he wants to cry. It's just the feeling that I get from his paws. Lyall? He squeezes my hand slightly and looks up. Yes? If things go well, there's something that I'd like to talk with you about. Of course. Even if everything goes horribly and I get sentenced to life in dungeons or worse, I want you to visit me here so that I can talk with you. Promise me you will. Without hesitation, he closes his hands together in between his paws and claps them tightly. The chains linking my arms together rattle as he does this. I promise. Once again, the bells outside begin to ring. Lyall leads me to the doorway and turns around. You go on ahead while I lock the cell door. Okay. I hesitantly take a couple of steps forward before walking down the long tunnel. As I walk, the feeling of comfort that I had while with Lyall starts to fade away. Then I remember why I'm here and what's going to happen. Amazingly, being around Lyall made the emotional part of my brain forget about all of it. But now it all comes crashing down upon me like a roof collapsing. My heart feels like it fell from my chest and hit the floor. I try to pick up myself mentally and continue to walk forward. That's all that I can really do at this point. I just have to try and get through this. I try to take my mind off of it by looking around. I've never actually gotten to see most of the hall leading to my cell. I pass the first 2 cells and take a peek inside of them. They both look similar to each other, but they're definitely different compared to the one that I was put in. They each have a window with bars on it, and both cells are very small. At least half the size of my own. There's also no bed or anything else for that matter. Each cell is completely empty aside from the shackles hanging from the brick wall. I hear Lyall's footsteps approaching from behind me. I really did put you in a good cell, you know. I wish you didn't have to put me in a cell at all. Me too. We continue walking, his helmet underneath his arm, as his other arm is draped over my back, his paw rubbing my shoulder. The chains hanging from my wrists cling lightly with each step as we make our way up the stairs. How many dungeons are there? Most people only know about the first 2 levels. You were placed on the first level. It's a series of cells that were built as part of the castle's foundation. That's why each of them has a window? Yes. Well, some of them do. We're now in the main part of the castle, and it's honestly a breath of fresh air. We pass a few people going about their business. They don't pay us any mind, aside from a few that stare at us as we pass. When the castle was being built, they were actually being used as rooms for the workers. Although they weren't locked in there like you were. They were basically used like barracks. But the plans for them to be the dungeons had been decided in the initial schematics. We come across a fork in the hallway, but instead of going down the corridor that leads to the throne room, we turn left. The voices of people ahead starts to fade away as we pace down the other hall. Isn't the throne room that way? We won't be going through the main entrance. Oh, that's actually a relief. I prefer not to be sneered at walking up the aisle. Anyways, what about the second level? The second level is meant for a more permanent stay. It's underneath the castle's foundation, embedded deep within the cliffside. The heat from the hot springs can really be felt down there, and you never see the light of day. You don't want to be put down there, and honestly, I'd do anything in my power to stop that from happening. It's horrible down there. Hearing all of this causes goosebumps to form on my arms. Thankfully, they don't get used often. Are there more levels? He doesn't answer right away, not until we turn down a very narrow hall. There's 2 castle guards standing by the door at the end of the hall. They're both cats, out of an earshot and talking with each other. There's one more level, but it hasn't been used in ages. And it definitely won't be used for you. We get closer to the end of the hall, and he stops and takes his arm off my shoulders, turning to me. Okay, the trial will be starting soon, so I just want to go over everything with you. I'm sure that you've been thinking about it as long as you've been in those cells, so you're more than prepared. Somewhat. But I think that we should still go over some of it. Okay? There will be a jury consisting of high nobility. You may recognize some of them. From that dreaded party. Hey! You got to dance with Captain Lyall Reed of the Royal Guard. Was it really all that bad? I shoot him a look in a deadpan manner. I'm only kidding. I know. Trust me, I wish that I could block out all of the bad stuff from that night. Me too. Anyways, there's going to be 7 people on this jury, including Elizabeth. After everything is said and done, they will give their verdicts. Once all of the votes have been read, the king will give his verdict, and his word is final. Very rarely does it differ from what the jury believes, though. Even if they all voted me innocent, I doubt Adrius would agree. You never know. We'll just have to see. Honestly, I don't know what he'll decide. What else do you know for sure? He thinks for a moment, fiddling with the plume on his helmet. Each person even remotely involved in what happened will testify. They will either testify against you or for you. Or they may even do both, depending on the information they give. That's very different from how it's done in Erin. I'll be going first since I made the arrest. Also, another thing in our favor is the fact that Bjorn is currently unable to testify. He reaches around and grips the handle of the sword confidently. And Adrift isn't too keen on delaying the trial. Who will testify in his place? Instead, Finn will testify in place of him, detailing the events and how he saw them. Finn is a good man, and he'll most definitely tell the truth. They will also have your account of what happened along with mine. As long as there's no contradictions, the jury will accept it. That could either be good or bad for me, depending on what Finn saw. Yes. Like usual, everything seems a bit unfortunate. Yes, that seems to be an ongoing theme. Is there anything else that you might be able to tell me? That's all I really know. I'm also not sure what the punishment will be. I can think of a few things. He lets out a sigh, his breath tremulously exiting his lungs. No. Lyall, you know more than I do what happens to people guilty of such crimes. No, I won't let it happen. I reach up and take his face in my hands. Yes, you will. No, I'll never. No. Listen to me. You're going to do everything in your power to prove my innocence, and I'll do the same. And if it's all for naught and I'm thrown in a cell, we'll continue to fight the odds. But if the worst happens, you're to do nothing. I can't stand the thought of roping you into a punishment you don't deserve. You don't deserve it either. I can feel my eyes beginning to water. It's not the point. I say this in a hushed whisper. Testifying for me is already putting you in a dangerous spot. I don't want you dying on my behalf. Tears begin to form on the corners of his eyes as he looks down at the ground. His breathing is heavy and his tail is tucked between his legs. Let's contemplate the horrible scenario where I'm sentenced to death. You are going to do nothing to stop it from happening. My eyes are welling with tears and my heart is racing. I can feel a headache coming on. Afterwards, you will mourn and weep as I know you will, because you are good and kind. And when the mourning is done, you will move on. You will find someone else who will love and treasure you as I do. And I know that you will try to make things work because that's what you've done since the moment that I've met you. You ask me to be reasonable, but it won't make things better. I'll be loyal to you until the day I die. Would that be the same loyalty as what you've shown this kingdom? Your loyalty to Lyre has tied you down and made you its prisoner. You are a knight, a servant. I will not have you make the same pledge to me. His breathing relaxes and I can tell that he's thinking of a way to reply. The bells also begin to ring again. I made that pledge when King Raynor asked it of me. I made that promise. He hangs his head low, his muzzle almost buried in the fluff of his neck. Lyall, I love you. For most of my life, I've never even known for sure what love was, but now that it has ripped into my soul, I can feel it. And I know that you love me too, and as you've told me before, I've made a great impact on your life. But if the worst should happen, don't let your loyalty to me chain you down as well. Don't. Because if you're loyal to me, you'll only be joining me in my grave. Please don't. But if you love me, you'll let me go. Richter. Even if it means tarnishing my own name more than I already have, I will stop at nothing to prove your innocence. I can see the pain in his eyes, and I know that this is a hard topic for him. But it needed to be brought up. I know you will. It's in your nature. He takes his arms to his face and wipes the tears from his eyes. After he does that, he bends down and wipes a tear from my eyes with his paw. The rough pads gently brush against my eyelids and I cradle my face in his paw, its warmth comforting. We stand there for a few minutes, the air heavy with the weight of all that's happened. One of the castle guards approaches us, their green cloak swishing with their tail. The other guard walks through the door to the other side. A commotion can be heard as he slips through. Sir Reed. Lyall takes me from his embrace and turns to them. Yes. They're ready for the accused to be brought out soon. He glances at me with his cat-like eyes. Lately, everyone either avoids looking at me or can't take their eyes off of me. He turns to me, a confident look covering his obvious worry. Are you ready? Does it matter? He lets out a sigh. I guess not. Lyall takes my hand, and we walk to the door at the end of the hall. When the doors open, walk through, and you should find your place before the throne. We make it to the door and stand in front of it. Lyall leans against the wall, resting the sides of his head up against one of the bricks. I stand across from the door, staring through the crack in the door. I can hear the faintest of noises of chatter coming from the other side. My skin is crawling and it begins to itch. I start to feel hot, and the taste of my own spit begins to become more noticeable. I reach behind my head, the chains ringing together and resting on my chest. I pull my hair out of my face. Lyall continues to rest against the wall, silent and calm. He's most likely thinking so that I decide to leave him to it, as I don't want to disturb his thoughts at a time like this. I should be concentrating as well. I close my eyes and try once again to trigger a vision of that night. Nothing happens. I open them again and my body shivers slightly. For some reason, I felt as if several people were all watching me. There was something else, though. A comforting hand on my shoulder. The feeling goes away, and I wonder if I imagined it. With the way things have been going lately, I doubt it. I brush it off and instead try to have a different vision. Something easier, just to make sure that I didn't lose the ability altogether. That familiar experience of losing all the feeling around me only for it to come back overtakes me once again. My feet feel as if they hit the ground very hard, sending a shock through my body. The ground, however, is soft. Whoever this is, they're looking down at the ground, leaning against something hard. It's most likely a tree. I can see the spots of light being cast between the leaves and onto the ground beneath their feet. Those are Lyall's feet. I know for sure that they're his. Their fur is the same color and everything. As I realize this, I start to notice everything else. The fluff around his neck and the swaying tail above his lower back. Only a few seconds into the vision, I hear a soft voice from behind me. You'll really do it? Of course. You promise? Richter. Lyall's slightly shaking me by the shoulder as I come out of the vision. He has his helmet on, his ears standing tall. Come on, we have to go. I look ahead and see that the door has been opened, the castle guards standing on the other side. He takes my hand and leads me through the door, the light from the throne room blinding at first. We exit the doorway and find ourselves in the back of the hall, near the windows. I'm overwhelmed by the amount of people in the hall. They're all backed up against the large windows and pillars, standing in the section's crowds. I've never actually seen this many people in the throne room before. They're all chat amongst themselves, their voices bouncing off the walls, forming a cacophony of nonsense. Just as I start to get used to the noise and presence of everyone in the room, they very suddenly quiet down. Just like that, everyone's eyes are on me. It's a horrible feeling. I'm reminded of the night once again. Every person in the ballroom standing around and staring at Lyall and I. It's happening again. I even start to feel the anger that took over during that awful moment, but I try to suppress it. Lyall lets go of my hand and instead holds onto the chains of the shackles, gently leading me to the center of the throne room. I try to stare at the ground as we pass everyone, head down, in order to avoid drawing any more attention. I can't help but peek around out of the corner of my eyes. The left side of the throne room is lined with some chairs. There are 9 chairs in total and 7 people seated in each chair. I recognize a few of them from the solstice. 2 owls, tall and gray, their faces judgmental and stern. The male owl is clad in crimson fabrics, and the female one wears a teal dress. I also recognize the vixen sitting next to them, her seafoam green dress embroidered with flowers and vines. Her smile from that night is gone, replaced with a neutral expression. There are some new faces, though. At least people that I've never noticed before. The one out of them all catches my eye is a large bear. He looks to be almost as big as Bjorn. So big that his chair has considerable space between the chairs on either side of him to give the people sitting in those chairs more room to sit. Not only is he as big as Bjorn, but he looks like him too, aside from the fact that his fur is black. On his left sits an elk. His antlers branch out, taking up a wide amount of space above his head. From the prongs of his antlers hang 4 metallic leaves, each one a different color. He looks to be very aged, but sits calm and steady, like an old tree. Next to him is what looks like a stoat. His clothes are flashy and green, honeyed golden ribbons draping down the sleeves and lining his vest. I recognize the crest of his cape, the 4-leaf clover being pierced by an arrow. I saw banners flying on the walls of Braden's Vale when I passed through there on my way to Lyre. They have a good relation with Erin, if my memory serves me right. Finally, at the very end of the row of chairs closest to the throne, I see Liz. She sits in the chair, her hands placed in her lap, with one leg crossed over the other. Unlike everyone else, she's the only one not looking at me. She seems to be actually avoiding eye contact altogether. That is, until she looks up and her eyes meet mine. I can't exactly understand the expression on her face and what it means, but she's clearly a bit uncomfortable. Maybe it's my appearance, or it's the fact that the day is finally here. Either way, I doubt that she's here because she wants to be. Next to those chairs is a small table. I can't tell from here, but it looks like there's some evidence on it. On the other side of the throne room, there's another cluster of chairs and a few people are sitting there. Kadaj is among them, his green clothes shimmering vibrantly in the light, making him stand out like a sore thumb. It helps because I almost forgotten what he looked like. The cat looks at me with a curious and almost concerned expression. Staggering the steps leading up the throne are several royal guards. Finn is among them, his helmet on and facing forward, posture straight and shoulders back. There's 2 empty spots among the guards, which I assume are meant for Bjorn and Lyall. Lyall continues to lead me to the bottom of the steps, making sure not to tug on the shackles. I'm almost helping by keeping up with him. It's dead quiet in the throne room now, aside from our footsteps. I expect to hear people whispering in the crowd, but nobody is uttering a word. I look up at the throne, the large wooden mass basking in the light from the windows. On the left of the throne stands Leif. I haven't seen him in a long time, but he looks the same as he did the last time that I saw him. After Lyall and I come to a stop at the bottom of the steps, Leif notices me looking at him. He looks away, but it doesn't matter as my eyes are drawn to the true centerpiece of the room. There he sits, the crowned king of Lyre. The throne looks small compared to him as he sits perfectly straight in the seat, arms resting at either side. Adrift doesn't take his amber eyes off of me for a moment as he leans forward in his throne, looking down at me with displeasure. It almost looks like he's looking right through me into my very soul. On his right stands a figure wearing a green cloak. Their robe is priestly and their arms are brought together within their sleeves. I've never actually seen them before. They take a few steps down the stairs and stand behind the guards before raising their paws into the air. All-powerful Tigran, we pray that you guide the members of this trial towards the truth. I can't say for certain, but I'm pretty sure that I see Adrius roll his eyes. Guide our king towards true justice, and may his judgment be swift and true. For he who sits in the throne of Lyre shall be righteous and protect all from the wicked. Even given the situation, I can't help but laugh at the idea that Tigran might not even be able to hear this person. Adrius sits up and I feel his gaze pierce through me once more. Lord Richter of Erin. Lyall still stands by my side, looking forward, his paws grasping the chains to my shackles lightly. Yes? The words come out a little bit raspy, so I clear my throat. He rubs his hand on the arm of his seat before continuing. You have been accused of murdering King Raynar Ossian on the night of winter solstice. Do you deny it? Yes. Very well. We shall proceed then. As king, I will be judging this trial. The rules are very simple. He leans back in his seat, relaxing his voice. You will speak only when spoken to, or when you have been permitted to speak without permission. Do you understand this? Of course. Good. Along with my judgment, there is a jury of lords and ladies from all across Lyre's territory. The hooded figure gestures to the nobility sitting off to my left. Lord Oscar Grimdell, Lord of Grimrock. The large bear stands from his seat, bowing to Adrius. The chainmail on his body clings together with every movement he makes. Lord Oliver Oswell, Lord of North Osrin. The first owl stands, bowing to Adrius. As he bows, he extends his wings behind his body, fluttering the cape draped over his shoulders. Along with his sister, Lady Olivia Oswell, Lady of South Osrin. The second one stands with him, performing a curtsy, before they both take their seats in unison. Lord John Galen, Lord of Galemore and Protector of the Galemorian Woods. The elk stands from his seat, propping himself up on a cane, nodding towards Adrius with a stern look. The leaves on his antlers shake as he does this. Lady Tyrell, Rihanna, Lady of Aenor. The vixen stands from her seat and curtsies, though it's not as elegant as she looks. She sits back down just as the elk steadily manages to place himself back into his own seat. Lord William Braden of Braden's Vale. The small stoat stands from his seat, proudly bowing before jumping back into his own chair. The furniture scuffs against the floor as he does this. Lastly, War Minister Elizabeth Renee of Rosewind. Liz leaves her seat and climbs the steps, taking her place on the right of Adrius's throne. As the current king's advisor, she will formally be at his side during his trial. She gives a slight bow in his direction before turning to face the front. The hooded figure takes his time, walking back down the steps as he takes a seat a few chairs down from Kadaj. Thank you for the introductions. The trial will now begin. And that's where I'm going to leave it for today. So, finally, Lyall and Richter were able to, reunite, even though it's basically on the eve of what's going to happen to Richter on the trial. And we also got to meet the jury of Richter's peers. I mean, obviously this is not a jury of Richter's peers, even though they're lords. They at least half of them are on a different standing than Richter. And they clearly, well, not clearly, but perhaps they might have some bias. At least one of them might have a really big bias. Hintity hint hint. So yeah. So your guess is as good as mine as to what may happen to, Richter. And even though Lyall is supposed to be like this big, imposing, like sweet-looking wolf, I often find that he looks kind of goofy at times. And he definitely looked kind of goofy with his helmet. But it was kind of like a nice touch for Atmac to make Lyall sprites with like the black eye that he has, and even the other eye kind of has like the shadow or like a bag under its eye. Like, that one still got hurt, but just not as bad as the other one. So he looks like really worse for wear. It would have been kind of funny if the scene of Richter getting cleaned involved Lyall cleaning him. Would have been funny / sweet, but yeah. I was kind of expecting that to happen when, when he was there. But I guess not. I'm curious why they mentioned the other levels of the dungeons. If that will have to do with perhaps maybe seeing the dungeons again. Also, it just occurred to me that the castle is on a cliff. You don't really see it from this picture, but I mean, I guess you kind of do because it looks elevated from the rest of the city or town or whatever. And if it has hot springs, that means that there's a volcano nearby. Anyways, so write down in the comments what you think, and thank you all for watching / listening. If you'd like to play Lyre yourself and find out what's going to happen to Richter, you can do so by going down into into the description and, going towards Atmac's Twitter page. And he should have a direct link to the itch.io page where you can download Lyre and play it yourself. And if you would like to support Project Lyre, you can also subscribe to their Patreon, and you get early access to builds of Lyre before anyone else does, including myself. And you also get some little extras here and there where it's like drawings that Atmac does in between the builds of Lyre, which only Patreons can see, and some of those are pretty spicy if you're into that. They also have some merch, like the little cell phone charms of Lyre, which I actually do have. I bought from Paw Print Press. But yeah. And yeah. Also, I have a coffee if you want to support me, you're welcome to do that. Any money helps, trust me. Trust me. Right now, any money helps. And but yeah, so I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.